Hello and happy Thursday. Welcome to another Thursday Lunch and Learn with Purse Strings. We come into this group about every other week to share tips, tricks, get those wheels turning about all things finances. And so today we're going to talk about this year, I'm going to get financially fit. And today we have Kristen Hafner on with us. At Purse Strings, we are all about providing some education for our communities of women. But then when you're ready to start planning for your retirement, maybe you're going through a divorce, you needed your wills, powers of attorney, selling, buying a house, any of these transitions or transactions, we have top tier financial professionals willing, ready, and able to serve you. We call those our Purse Strings approved professionals, and Kristen Hafner is one of them. So she's going to be talking about with us today how to get financially fit. But before we dive into all that fun, Kristen, could you give a little intro of who you are and what you do?
Hi, thank you for having me on Purse Strings today, Maggie. I am a certified financial planner, independent. I'm the founder of Financial Moxie. We also have another business segment named Divorce Moxie because I do divorce planning as well. We have been around for almost, I think it's about 17 years now. And when I got started, I did start in the divorce space, and this is why I'm very, very passionate about working with people on making good financially fit decisions, especially when they're going through transitions. And I think all of us have gone through a huge transition since COVID.
Yeah.
Nobody was excluded from that.
No, we weren't. We were not. And so I'm excited to kind of use that for our conversation today of being financially fit. For those of you who are tuning in and have any questions along the way, feel free to throw them in the chat. And if you're watching the replay, you could still throw them in the comments, and we're happy to come back to those. I do want to throw up here for Kristen, just a quick compliance, saying that everything here is just, none of it's advice personally. Yeah. Anything else to add to that?
No, just that's our standard disclosure.
Okay.
Regulatory.
Now that we got that out of the way, we can dive into all the fun.
Right, exactly.
So like you kind of said, we all kind of went through, we all not kind of went through COVID, had this whole period. Now we're coming back out. So I know how do we start being financially fit in this new world? It's different.
Well, yeah, so I think what's hard right now is paying attention and focusing. There's so many disruptions, there's headlines, there's shifts in different industries, and you know, the same thing but prior to COVID that I told my clients when they were going through these life transitions is the key to it is to pay attention because I'm a firm believer that when opportunities come your way, if you're not paying attention, you're not going to see that opportunity. And so it's an interesting dynamic when you're the most frustrated or have things happening all at once. You can't focus, and so if you're already paying attention to these things prior, it's a habit, and that's the thing is if you make it a habit to pay attention instead of avoiding it, you're not going to be surprised, no matter
Right.
what the disruption is.
Definitely. And so what kind of habits do you recommend, putting in place when we start talking about almost like our financial self?
I like to talk about things because a lot of times financial planners talk about all these technical terms and what is practical, and there's a lot of education to what we do. But when you look at your financial self, people are motivated in different ways. And I like to use the example of when you're working with a fitness trainer, because it does align with that approach, is when you go to someone to improve your fitness, they're going to evaluate where you are and where you stand. And so often when we talk about where you're at, you may have some assumptions of actually what your situation is. For example, I may ask, what's your budget for entertainment? And you may provide a number to me. And it's a guess, or it could be something that you actually investigated. Um, but we like to look and see if it's actually what is happening, because you can't make an improvement unless you know where you stand. And so going through that self-evaluation phase, and identifying the areas of improvement, just like you would if you were doing fitness training, you want to improve your nutrition or your strength, or any of those things. It takes time, and it's not immediate, and
Right.
I think people get frustrated with the process, because it does take time, and it does take intentional shifts, and it can be very, very slight shifts, just like you may change your daily routine to work out 10 minutes a day. You may decide to change your check in on your financial self, mid month or end of month. The biggest key is you want to figure out the frequency, or work with somebody that can help you figure that out, so that you don't avoid the subject.
Right.
Which is often what people do with financial situations, especially when there's a lot of things around that are causing stress.
Definitely. It's easy to put your head in the sand and kind of to ignore it, but we know most things we can't ignore forever. We have to face it sometime. And so, like you said, we kind of need this consistency of when to check on things and to make these small changes along the way. I think of like even, passing up that brownie now and then or changing to a salad. It's like these small but consistent habits that need to be in place.
Right, and a lot of our habits have changed since COVID. We adapted certain financial habits, or whether they were financial or fitness or health habits during COVID, because we were restricted. And now we're going back to a new normal, which may be a combination of those habits all kind of merging together. And so people are struggling with figuring out that path. And a lot of, what I try to really encourage them to do is to figure out what they can control, kind of make
Mhm.
it, simplify it, and figure out what they can really control. And one of the things I've identified when I work with clients is you really can't control what's going around. You can't control the market. You can't control global affairs. You can't
Yeah.
control the politics, right? We all know that. Um, but you can control what you eat, what you spend, and how much you move. You do have complete control over those three things. And so if we figure out the recipe for that individual that motivates them, just like a fitness trainer does, we can see some progress, and it builds on itself, just like when you work with fitness trainer.
Definitely. And I see a lot of similarities between like a financial planner and a fitness trainer. There's a lot of crossover there to me.
Yeah, so the similarities, I mean, the process, it's interesting to me because as I worked with a lot of clients coming out of either a death of a spouse or divorce, um, the similarities are just like the coaching similarities that we're all used to, but we're applying this to a financial, your financial self, which is not
Right.
something you're used to doing. You're used to just sitting in front of someone that says, hey, this is your situation, this is the number you're at, and we believe that you have a probability of success of this percent. So that's good information to have, but how do you make that better, or improve it, or maintain it?
Right.
And so the coaching similarities is the first phase is an evaluation. So the
Mhm.
fitness trainer does an evaluation. Financial advisor does an evaluation. Where are you? We actually look at 3 months of spend
Okay.
altogether, and we try to look for those trends and then identify them. And normally when we do that, several things pop up where the person's not aware that this is what's been happening with their budget. Then we go into a planning phase where, okay, so if we're going to plan for short term, or we're going to plan for long term. So that's similar to when you're doing your fitness. You're going to have a short term plan of it to hit your goals right away, and then
Mhm.
how are you going to make this habit shift long term so you can have better health and wellness. There's also several education aspects, so you could be educating yourself on financial strategies, just like you would with nutrition and weight training. There's tools, you have physical tools in fitness training. We have digital tools in financial planning and education. Then there's the goal setting. Now, the goal setting is very individualistic. Um, for me, as a planner that works with people that are in a lot of transition, um, everyone's goals are different. I
Mhm.
can't tell you that I mirror everyone's goals the same. It's really, really has to be personal, and you have to work with somebody that's willing to go to that personal level, just like you do with your personal trainer.
Mhm.
And so that's something that we take pride in to figure out what really makes that person motivated. Then we have the implementation phase of the plan, accountability. So you have that financial planner to hold you accountable. You have the trainer to hold you accountable. And then maintenance and reward. You have to reward yourself when you hit those successes.
Yeah.
Like if you don't reward yourself and take advantage of that, you're not going to keep going.
Definitely. And it seems like, so yeah, I mean, it always makes sense that you need to know your starting point. You need to make a plan and things grow. Like you said, there's some education and tools, but it's not like day one you learn every lift and every muscle in the body. You just learn some of it and then you keep evolving and you keep growing. And I like those, those small term goals and those long term goals. Um, because we need that path kind of to stay on. So we keep doing what we're supposed to be doing to
Yeah.
see that success.
Yes, of
Um,
course.
but it is, now post COVID, kind of a new adjustment of, physically now maybe I could get back into the gym. I don't have to be doing my home workout, or I could go to the grocery store and buy nutritious meals or the farmer's market instead of just getting them shipped to my house. So things have really changed.
Yeah, and so we're seeing like when I actually sit with clients now post COVID, and they're ready to dive in, what what was a necessity during COVID. So like an example of a necessity would be like meal delivery,
Right.
or you couldn't really go out to eat. So people have, because this has been going on now for more than 2 years, it's become a habit,
Hmm.
right? And so now that we're out of that new normal, the concept of getting in the car and going and picking up our food is just not appealing. But since we can go back to eating out and traveling, your budget was suppressed during COVID in those areas. And so it was okay to have that delivery service extra into your budget. But now we're seeing the rise in all three of those across the board. So then there
Right.
has to be a choice. You have to go in and you have to pay attention and say, okay, really, do I need to have the food delivery service all the time? And is it really financially fit for me to continue this convenience that was a necessity? And,
Right.
and it's starting to shift, and we have to pay attention to it. That's the key. If you just keep going down that road and not pay attention, you can eat into your emergency funds, reserves, and things like that, and that's when people start to struggle.
There are, I feel like, a lot of habits that we did pick up, like that food delivery or things like that. Um, I know Amazon went off the charts, getting everything delivered, where now it's like we could run to Target and grab everything or whatever, but it's so easy, throwing things in the cart and ordering them as a push of a button, that things just appear at our doorstep. And it's almost become too easy where we do need to be very conscious about these different items. Otherwise, all our money will just go out the door.
Right. And I think people, I mean, prior to COVID, online shopping was a way for people to price compare, right?
Yeah,
Like you could go and look at several stores and see what the best price was, or they would price match things. And then when COVID hit, it was more like where could we get these items and how could we get them shipped? Because we also had a lot of supply shortages.
yeah,
So it's about kind of going full circle back to that and using the tools you had before, which is harder because we've been in this more than 2 years and we've formed a habit. So it's going to take conscious, intentional shifts to make that habit change back or turn into a positive relationship. The other thing that I've been getting a lot of questions on, which is interesting, is so many people signed up for apps during COVID, whether they're streaming apps or fitness apps. They had subscriptions that they had because they had to fill their time. And now that they're able to do more regular activity in person, everyone's like, oh my gosh, I had two Hulu subscriptions and I had, two Peacock subscriptions. How do I make it stop? Or they find out that multiple family members had the same, and now all these people are trying to evaluate, because it is impeding the budget. What do they need? What do they really need moving forward in the new normal? And what are they actually using?
Right.
Which
Right.
is which is key, because I mean, if you're using that fitness app on a regular basis, just like if you were going to the gym, then that's a positive spend. But if it's something that you're just not using, then we should eliminate it or figure out what you will use in that area.
Definitely. And I know sometimes we talk about people who, let's say you subscribe to 5 different streaming platforms, because honestly, that's not even that outrageous these days. And if you're home inside the whole time, you might be watching something on all of them. But now that we're getting out and things like that, sometimes we recommend, pay for one or two for a couple months. Once you kind of watch what you want there, stop that one and go to the next one, catch up on your shows, instead of pay for 5 all at once every single month.
Yeah.
Because we are also, trying to get out, trying to do these different things. And I know as we were talking about this conversation, it is that balance of, I want to go out and eat. I haven't done that for years, but now I want to order in food. How do we balance both of those? Or, yeah, are we going to the gym or are we paying for the app? Which one are we going to do? Because we really don't need to do both of them.
Right. And making up, there's a lot of making up for lost time. People, there is an emotional wealth to all of these decisions. Like if you haven't seen your family in a long time, you may schedule more trips than you ever have in one year.
Yeah.
You may have, a lot of people have trips that they postponed, right?
Oh,
That they're actually executing now. And so, I encourage people to do those things because it brings them emotional wealth. But then moving forward, it can't be that can't be your habit of normal
right.
to be taking that many trips in one year and then not paying attention to what that's doing, because as we experience these things and we're not paying attention, then it's that we're going back to the fundamental strategy of budgeting, is to have a good emergency fund in place, to pull from if you need to do these things or you have a need. And that's what I'm concerned about. A lot of clients is they had very healthy emergency funds during COVID because we couldn't do anything,
Yeah.
and then and then now everything's opened up, and I see those emergency funds disappearing, with reason, but we need to reestablish them moving forward.
We definitely did have that like life short now. We got to do it all. But, you know, what do we value the most? What do we want to spend our time on the most? What's really most important to us? And part of that is protecting our future self. So I know you said emergency fund is like a big thing that we still need to keep up. What other kind of like budgeting strategies are things that we should kind of reassess or be conscious about, as we go into this new year and want to create some better habits?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, because there are certain things that really, they're small and they're not significant, but if you add them all up together, you can get a very good end result. And you can do some of these things on your own. You don't need a financial planner to help you with this. And so one of these things is emergency fund. So when you're starting out, maybe right after you graduate college, or you're starting a trade, you may not be able to reserve in your savings more than 3 months of your mandatory expenses, which that's fine. But ideally, you want to build that emergency fund up to about 12 months of your expenditures that you have to spend. That means your living costs of, rent, mortgage, the things that you would have to continue to pay if you had a disruption, or had to change jobs. So it's anywhere between 3 to 6 months to 12 months that you should have in that liquid. I mean, when I say emergency, it should be sitting in a savings account where you can pull,
Yeah.
not sitting in an investment that you would have to liquidate or something like that. It should actually be readily available. Some clients, are fine with leaving them in the savings account. Some clients will move it to a separate account so they don't, have access to it. Whatever works for you. but you need to, if you pull from that, you need to replace. And see,
Mm-hmm.
that's what people forget. If they continue to pull and not replace, then they're not going to have that emergency fund for long. Um, then the second thing is open communication between family and spouses. So there's not one family that I've seen that everyone has the same money mindset. So
What?
so I may be talking to somebody who's is an extreme saver, and I may talk to somebody who really wants to be investing in, high risk assets, and they're living in the same household. So what has to happen is the information, that you're trying to pay attention to needs to be accessible in one place so that you can actually communicate about it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have two people that have differences and you don't communicate, then that's where you're going to run into trouble, because one person's going to go off and do one thing, the other person's going to, and then you're going to, evaluate, and you're like, wait, I didn't know this is what's going on with our financial selves. So
Right.
communication is key. And a financial planner can help you with that. They can
Yeah.
help kind of meet in the middle, and have those discussions and help buffer that difference. Then there's also segmenting the spend. So I actually just did this yesterday with a client. This client is so dear to me, but we took 3 months of spend. So that would be, November, October, and January. Part of January, we're looking at that, and we went through each category and we evaluated what was a choice and what
Mm.
a required expenditure. And for her, it was very enlightening because a majority of what she was spending was a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so the good thing about the conversation, it was a very sobering conversation, but the good thing was she has control of all those choices.
Yeah.
So how do we figure out, what's a healthy relationship with those choices, and how much should she be focusing on different areas? And that's how it turns into a positive discussion instead of a negative discussion.
I
Um,
love that. And something that we saw and somebody else recommended is like you can't even bucket. Like you really have to dive in. Don't even bucket just like Amazon, because some things in there are a need, like the toilet paper and the soap, but other
mhm,
thing in there are choices.
yes.
And so it's not even like you can bucket all of Amazon as one thing or even all of Target as one thing. Like we got to dive into that and see like what did we purchase there. But good thing that history is right on our computer.
Right. And like some people say, hey, I'm not going to scan my receipts, right? But when you have those big box stores like Target, where you can buy multiple things, Costco,
Right.
these big where you can buy household things and you can buy groceries and you can buy, items that are just choices. You can assign a percentage to that receipt. So you can
Hmm.
kind of look at it quickly and say, 20% was actual choice, 30% was need. And then at least the person that's working with you on that accountability can at least identify a healthy ratio between the two when you're stepping in that store.
Right.
And so that's a good way of handling it, because a lot of people are averse to just sitting there and putting every line item in data entry. So that moves to one of the other strategies, is identifying a budget tool
Hmm.
that is easy to use, and it could be as simple as your current online banking.
Yeah.
Um, but it should be a tool that auto budgets for you and auto puts in the categories based on what the bank categorize it. So you have very minimal data entry.
Hmm.
These tools are very robust, and you can train them by putting the categories in if they're not reading them correctly, and they'll remember them. And then you literally have to maybe update a couple transactions on a monthly basis, and you can spend most of the time focusing on looking at what your habits are and if you're meeting your goals. So that's really good tool to use, and there's a lot of them out there. It's really based on how you work and what works for you. The other thing is you should at least check in on your financial self minimum mid-month and end of month. And the strategy behind that is that if you check mid-month and you see you're off in a certain category, you have half of the month to make
Right.
some different decisions so that you can hit that goal. Or if you check in mid-month and you know you're on track in one category and you want and you're under in another category, you can make a decision. You can decide to go on that weekend trip because you know that you are within budget and you have
Yeah.
that, you have that runway to make that decision for yourself. And
Yeah.
it turns into a positive relationship instead of regretting the decision you made post end of month. So that's a good thing. And then seeking an accountability partner is always, it could be someone in your household if you're comfortable. It could be a family member. It could be a friend that wants to go on this journey with you, or it could
Hmm.
be a professional like a financial service, a person planner, that will actually meet with you on a regular basis to evaluate where you're at. And that usually is when you work with someone like us, our firm, we'll meet with you monthly for 12 months. And then the
Okay.
goal is that you are able to do it on your own. So you're not going to
Yeah.
need us every month, but we're there as a resource to keep, if you want more accountability. And then the other thing, this is my biggest thing, is celebrate the progress no matter how small it is.
Yep.
I mean, if you improve or you hit a goal, you need to celebrate it and you need to, encourage yourself to continue. Because if you do not have that positive talk with yourself, you're just going to stop.
And
Yeah.
so, how do you celebrate these improvements? Is that like a self-talk? Is that a purchasing something for yourself? Like, how does that work for you? I know it's different for each person.
Yeah. So like when I have when you have the short term wins, it's more of encouraging that person that they can continue doing this to get to the level of, let's say maybe they have some debt that they're trying to resolve or something like that, that they can actually achieve that.
Hmm.
So if I went in and I looked like on any average budget, you could have, I don't know, 30 or 40 categories that you're
Yeah.
focusing on. And if we focus on all those categories and maybe you were successful in one area and the other 29 were off, you basically not want to show up.
Right.
So if when we're looking at these budgets, we always focus on no more than two of the choice categories.
Oh.
So we're focusing on for example, we could focus on entertainment and eating out,
Hmm.
or we could focus on eating out and travel.
Hmm.
So if we can affect change there, then it seems to migrate to all the other categories because then you start using that same decision process in the other choice categories, and then you start to see that you can do this, and
Yeah.
it's not negative.
Right. You prove to yourself that
Result.
you've done it before. See how you did it. You can do it again in just a different category.
Right, and once you see that extra cash flow maybe going into your emergency fund to replace it, it's very satisfying. Or maybe you start to invest.
Hmm.
You've never been able to invest before, and you can start talking about possibly starting an investment account or increasing what you're contributing to your already existing retirement plan earlier than you thought. So those
Yeah.
are things that start to center your financial self, and you understand where you're going instead of, being stuck in the weeds.
Definitely. Definitely. Awesome. This has been a ton of great information and a great list right there of, different things to focus on, to kind of do, habits to put in place. Are there any ones on that list that we missed or anything else that you want to make sure we touch on?
um, just I think the very last one was, I'm really strong about, there's for every yes, there's a no.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really about prioritizing those yeses and evaluating the no's and the positive relationship between that. And I think we've lost sight of that in COVID because you know, there's been a lot of yeses because the things that we normally it would be a choice were a necessity during that time
Mm-hmm.
period, and there was a reason for it. And so now a lot of people are saying yes, 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 yes to travel, yes, yes, yes to spending online. So we have to evaluate that, and we have to figure out what's, the normal, what should be our new normal.
Mm-hmm.
One of my clients said to me, I remember when I used to set a goal for myself that I would eat out every Friday. or I would, and people are now eating out every Friday, Saturday, Sunday
Yep.
because, right, because they couldn't anymore.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to kind of, at some point, we're going to have to shift to figure out what that normal is going to be. And saying yes all the time, it's probably not in the best interest of your,
Right.
of your financial fitness in 2023.
So that's a great advice. Whatever we're saying yes to, it's no to something else, which would kind of be no to our future selves or that savings, which we do want as well.
Mhm.
But I feel like you've given a ton of great information and just kind of food for thought to think about, as we start making decisions into the new year. Just to be conscious, small decisions really do count. They add up, and just to be aware of what we're doing and if that really aligns with our values.
Yes, I agree. And some people think that they can't they can't work with a financial planner if they don't have a lot of investments. But there
Hmm.
are programs, and we do offer one where we just work with budget and cash flow, and you do not have to be someone that has sizable investments. So if you need the help, seek the help.
Yeah.
There are services, or there's also money coaches. We have so many professionals within purse strings that have
Yeah.
all these skills that are ready to help individuals at all levels.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, and you have to start, with somebody's help to get to each level. You don't just start with $500,000. You just need to work your way up there. So we do have so many professionals. So, reach out to them. Don't be afraid. Make this your year of being financially fit. If you want to reach out to Kristen and have any more questions or want to work with her email's been going through the bottom, Kristen@financialmoxie.com. She's also one of our Purse Strings approved professionals, so you can check her out on our site, pursestrings.co. But I appreciate you coming on today and sharing your knowledge and sharing kind of these things that you've seen over the past couple months, because I think it's so interesting and gives us a great kind of step back and food for thought as we go into the new year and be really conscious about these decisions that we're making.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's, don't even think about the past, because I mean, we
Yeah.
all went through it. Just move forward.
Yep. Sounds great to me. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So, thank you everyone for tuning in this week. We'll be back here in 2 weeks and we'll talk to everyone soon. Thank you again and goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.